sometimes you have to separate, how you feel politically when you're doing business, but it's very difficult to here. And some of the things that we saw were disturbing over here, the way that, Trump wanted to make his interest and things like that. But I will say this. For us, this started over a year ago. This was such a dynamic place to do business anyway, well before Donald Trump came over here. But there is an unlocking of technical and financial transfers going on. And you know what? Bloomberg reported this 6 days ago. You guys did on CFIUS, right? The Committee for Foreign Investments in the United States,
Yep.
and how they're going to actually streamline those actual regulatory issues. And what does that mean for the UAE and for other places here in the Middle East, like Saudi or Qatar? What that means is that you're going to have much quicker, more efficient technology transfer outside of the CFIUS type of regulatory structure that you have to use. And that was something that I did not know was going to happen. I actually read it when you all reported it. And I was on the
Wow.
Financial Services Committee, Joe. So I actually know how CFIUS works. So for me, the unlocking of the potential here, I believe we already had American companies coming here. I think that American companies, specifically by the UAE, have been invited to come in here and do business. And what we've seen is incredible reception, courtesy, and respect as we're here with our AI company. I've never seen anything like it, Joe, to be honest.
Huh. That's incredible. So this is a new frontier, obviously, for high tech. Is it an answer to our decoupling with China?
I think a lot of people talked about that here. I don't like to, there's so much pride and respect that the Emiratis have when they're having discussions with you, especially when they find out you're a former congressman. They actually sometimes push away from politics because they don't want to get that in the way of business. It is such a respectful culture. And that's something that I've tried to respect as we're going on here. But what you're looking at, I think the UAE, what I was told by somebody very high up in one of the Emirates, listen, Joe, I've been from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, all the way up to Ras Al Khaimah. I've met with the highest, some of the highest, I would say, positions in some of these areas. And what they're saying is like, listen, hey, nobody's ever going to be the United States. But we do believe that we can be the answer, right, for technology and for growing other companies from the United States, but really being that answer to other countries that might be looked at as threat countries. But you have to remember, too, UAE does business everywhere. It's a dynamic, diverse, accepting environment as long as you follow the rules, right? You have respect, right? You go forward in a way that's very, very legal. We've even had discussions with individuals asking us about, can our AI help with compliance? So there's so much going on here. But again, I think the UAE looks at themselves, and also I would say Saudi and Qatar as we're going forward here. I think they look as the linchpin in the global world for a dynamic building of companies and tech services and manufacturing. And what we've seen here, I had some stories, Joe, when me and you have a bourbon sometime, the stories here about the growth of American companies is pretty extraordinary.
Well, but this is extraordinary. We saw Jensen Huang there with Donald Trump in the Middle East talking about selling millions of chips in the UAE. When we consider the diversion rule from the Biden administration that came in at the last minute and made this impossible for some of the countries that you're visiting this week, Denver, do we look back at the Biden administration as a misstep on the march to innovation in AI? Are they righting the wrong?
It's actually a really great question. I think, though, when you're looking at China specifically, also when I was on the Financial Services Committee, I had to go to South America and talk about the Belt and Road initiatives from China, which is really a threat to us economically. And we can go on that. I was on the China task force. So I would say that Joe Biden had a very difficult decision on how you protect actually against Chinese practices and what we do with our chip makers and our dominant technology, like with Nvidia. I think what you're seeing now, as we're seeing sort of this change in the worldscape, is you're looking at security structures that are being actually talked about over here right now. And I think what you're seeing with the UAE, they're actually pledging that they're going to have those security structures in place, right, to guard against any type of, I would say, illegal IP transfer between China, right, and U.S. companies that are coming over here. Last year when I was here, and this is my second time last year, we were actually talking about NVIDIA chips and working through attestations for the State Department to see if we can do it. And it was really a no-go. So it's very interesting to me that NVIDIA now has a play over here, but I do think there could be some security concerns. But looking at the UAE, they have been trying to address that down the line, and it's something I've been very blunt about. And again, they're very respectful when I talk about things. But Joe, I still got to be me, right? And I still got to actually outline the things that I think need. That's just the way I'm wired. But these are, again, I do believe, and I'm going to say this cautiously, I do believe that you see a new security posture here in the UAE that's saying, listen, you come here and American companies will be protected. And that is some of the assurances we've been getting over here. Now, is that true? We'll see. But right now, from what I've seen with the UAE, with Dubai, with Abu Dhabi, all the way up to the northern province of Ras Al Khaimah, I think we're having a resurgence and looking at security and them as being allies to us in this region. But again, it's trust but verify. But they also think the same about us in some ways too. So it's very interesting.